Umbrella, the resident and evil linchpin of, well,
Resident Evil.
Whilst in the public view they were a beloved pharmaceutical giant that helped human progress, behind closed doors and often deep underground, Umbrella were deeply entrenched in experimental and production of the kind of bioweapons to haunt your dreams. The kind of bioweapons that sometimes needed to be restrained or terminated, and the brilliant minds of Umbrella couldn't afford to be put in harm's way. Enter Umbrella's multiple private armies, but who are they? And what separates the two major Umbrella PMCs? I'm James for First Aid Spray, and this is Umbrella's Militia. As with all of our lore videos, we first want to shout out the Resident Evil podcast and their master of mythology, the Batman. Making these videos is a hell of a lot easier thanks to REP's timeline that you can check out at their website via the link below. It's not particularly clear when the UBCS came into being, but it was sometime around the early 90s. The Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service was founded by Sergei Vladimir to hire platoons of men who were trained to deal with potential issues with Umbrella's biological weapons and beyond. Basically, if a tyrant or a hunter ever got too far out of control during testing, the UBCS was charged with stepping up and putting it down as swiftly as possible. On top of this, Sergei's vision for the militia was worldwide deployment. Containing damage caused by accidental biological weapon escapes or outbreaks could not be achieved by the standard military of the nations of the world, as bioorganic weapons were, by their very nature, secretive. But UBCS could be sent in to deal with any issue. This was a high-risk job, and so the hiring process for the militia had to reflect that. You know that bit on job-seeking websites where it says previous experience necessary? Yeah, that, but think with less Indeed and more major detention centers. The UBCS was largely made up of former military men from the world over, often those on death row awaiting their call for execution. The offer of employment to save them from their fate was one that many chose, including former war criminals, spies, and kidnapped resistance men. Some, like Carlos Oliveira, were such wanted men that they went through plastic surgery to start their new lives as Umbrella's devoted new servicemen. They were dosed with viral antibodies and given extensive training, which immediately paid dividends for Umbrella. Their success rate when deployed to contain out-of-control BOWs was high, and whilst the mortality rate for UBCS servicemen was similarly steep, Umbrella had a constant source from various former communist countries like the USSR, whose own nation's militaries had abandoned them. UBCS platoons were often 30 men strong, divided into Alpha, Beta, and Charlie squads, typically armed with SIG Pro handguns and M4A1 assault rifles, or occasionally MP5 machine guns for close encounters. Notable instances of UBCS deployment contain a successful mission with a high death roll, where a platoon was sent in to contain an out-of-control early tyrant model. The ensuing struggle led to research in specifically designed weapons such as the Umbrella Magnum revolver that were built for stopping large-scale BOWs. In fact, the failings of the expendable UBCS militia became a secondary purpose for the soldiers. Famously, the UBCS were launched into Raccoon City to gather combat data of Umbrella's BOW programs, live and in the field. One final wrinkle to the UBCS was the inclusion of personnel with additional secretive objectives. Monitors or supervisors were often higher priority soldiers with lower morale standards. Those such as Nikolai Zinoviev were paid highly to spy on fellow employees, destroy evidence, and often sometimes lead their teammates directly into unwinnable situations in order to secure better combat data.
You think money. I like money. We shall make ours an ongoing arrangement.
The USS Umbrella Security Service are, by design, even more of a mystery than the UBCS. The time of their formation is unknown, as are the minds behind the organization. What is known is that their original purpose was, as hinted in the name, protection detail in every possible way. From garrisoning squadrons at key and sensitive Umbrella sites such as the Arclay Laboratory to transporting classified goods. It was the USS's role to provide security to all the scientists at Umbrella and their work. On occasion, they were asked to perform very direct work, such as eliminating threats to the company's secrets by outside parties, and in some cases, internal concerns. as was the case with the 1988 assassination of Umbrella co-founder James Marcus by his associate Oswald E. Spencer. When performing covert operations, USS were typically clad in black, shrouded with gas masks and armed with MP5s and C4 explosives. Some of them also got super cool and not at all unnecessarily edgy names like Mr. Death. Lovely. Candidate selection and training for the USS remains a mystery up to a certain point. However, we do know that the USS facilities were constructed on Rockfort Island in 1993 after Umbrella seized ownership of the land. The most prominent member of the squadron, the man known only as Hunk, was trained here. USS soldiers were presumably also stationed here as security for the prison on the island. Hunk rose through the ranks of the militia to be a very important asset to Umbrella due to his adaptability, his ability to survive against all odds, and his focus on the objective.
My extraction point.
With the potential betrayal and defection to the United States government of lead scientist William Birkin seemingly increasingly likely, Hunk was charged with leading the USS First Squad into Birkin's laboratory in September 1998 to take him and his precious G-Virus into Umbrella custody. Although the mission went awry, Hunk at the very least outlived the rest of his teammates and delivered Birkin's work back into Umbrella's hands. Whilst USS members tended to be married to their jobs and devoted to their employers, days later a rare defection from the ranks took place as Second Squad leader Rodriguez evacuated Raccoon City with evidence to prove Umbrella's biological experiments and a test drug that could potentially halt the spread of the T-Virus. What a happy ending to the Raccoon City incident. Sort of. With the collapse of Umbrella in the early 2000s, both the UBCS and USS ceased to be. However, the high success rate and striking look of the latter left an impact in the world of biological warfare, as when Umbrella Corps began training their own private militia around a decade later, it was heavily inspired by the USS. And that's a little insight into the formation and roles of Umbrella's private militia. Which of these two organizations would you like to see return to the series? And what other pieces of Resident Evil lore would you like us to cover next? Make sure to subscribe to see more content like this. I've been James, and hey Birkin, don't worry, me and my squad of ultimate badasses are here to protect you. Not!